Okay.
Live. All right, other questions? Or we're going to the next chapter.
I can see Chicago arising after 20 years because they can overprice it no matter what. But
Pass that to the chief. Okay. Somebody's got any questions? I have. All right, we're going to chapter 12, and I don't want you to go to chapter 12. Chapter 12 and 13 deal with financing. Who are the two players when you talk about financing? Mortgage on mortgagee, okay. Translate that. Who's the mortgagor? Okay, who's the mortgagee?
Who's applying for mortgage?
Okay, so you're telling me that the lender's gonna give something to the borrower? They don't give toasters and stuff away anymore. That doesn't fit me, I don't know what
They
that.
give Starbucks.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. What you just said to me was totally incorrect. You play lender, okay? I'll be the borrower. I walk into your bank, I want to borrow $100,000 at 3% interest for 30 years. Do you want to check me out before you make that loan?
Yeah.
Okay. What do you want to know?
Everything about you, what's your social?
That is I don't know what to answer, so I'll just give a big broad one that might be right. I want to know what you want to know.
Lenders want to know if you have the capacity to borrow and the.
All right, income,
And the experience of paying back.
appears paying back,
As a value.
and the fact that you do pay back.
Background.
Okay. What about, assets?
Yes.
Why?
Because
Because unless you're going for 100% financing and you're gonna have the seller pay your closing costs, you gotta come up with extra money. Not just what you're putting down on the property. Okay. Now, is that sufficient enough for you to give me that loan so I can buy my house?
No.
Why not?
Because you have to assure that you will have something in the future to hold on to the money that you will give. Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, in other words, you don't trust me.
No.
You need to
Yeah,
have a
you have to
stable
know
income.
what-
If you trusted me, you would just give me the money and I would pay it back.
Yeah.
But something tells me you probably don't trust me. Number one, you're trying to figure out, am I trustworthy from your perspective? And secondly, the collateral that you're gonna put up, that I'm gonna put up,
Must be worth it.
must be worth it, there's what the appraisal is. Has no title issues, that's why we do title searches. In this chapter, you have to think like a lender. Well, this chapter's gonna have you for lunch, and dinner, and snack. Because you have to learn to speak the language. And everybody got the mortgage or mortgagee, you just screwed it up. Which tells me you don't really know who the mortgage or mortgagee is. As the lender, would you want me to sign a document that says I promise to repay the loan?
Yes.
Would you want me to sign a document that puts something up as collateral for that loan?
Yes.
What document obligates the borrower to repay the loan?
Promissory.
The promissory note. Well, who's promising?
The borrower.
The borrower. You're promising to what?
Thanks.
Okay. What document is used to put the property up as collateral?
The lien.
The mortgage. The lien is not a document.
And they're all gonna spell.
Sorry, sir.
I don't remember if it's.
I went for a whole essay, and all my essays, I wrote fives. I wrote a five for all my essays.
So which document? So you told me that the mortgagor was the lender. You told, I heard a whole bunch of you tell me that the mortgagor was the lender.
No, it's not, it's the prospective one. He needs to borrow.
Because we go back to the ORs and the EEs, because apparently you've forgotten what an OR is and what an EE is. What's an OR doing?
It's the one who.
Giving paper. And the person receiving it? Okay. So I have a question for you. Who gives the note? The borrower or the lender?
The lender.
Oh, so you mean the lender's gonna give you, the borrower, a piece of paper that says they promise to repay you? I don't think so.
Okay.
Who gives the mortgage? The lender or the borrower? So you're telling me that the lender is gonna give you a piece of paper that says if they don't pay you, you can take their bank?
You need to.
I don't think so.
You need to sign it.
It's not a document until it's signed, dear. In case you missed that in the 18 times that we've done it so far. See, everybody says, I'm going to the bank to get a mortgage, which is pure bullshit. You're going to the bank to get a mortgage loan, which is a loan secured by real property. Now, how do they secure the property? By making you, the borrower, sign a mortgage. And how do they prove that you are now personally liable for the repayment of that debt? That's the note. The note is your promise to pay back the loan. So it lays out what the loan is, what your interest rate is, what the term is, what your payments are gonna be. That's all the note. And if they were sufficiently comfortable with you, there'd be no other documents. But I have a feeling they want some sort of collateral just in case you go belly up on it. That's the mortgage. Who signs the mortgage?
The borrower.
So the lender's gonna sign the note. If the lender's signing the note, then the lender's promising to pay something. Because that's what a note is. How many of you financed the purchase of your property here in Florida? Interesting, isn't it? Here's another example of where they paid $400,000 and there's pieces of paper that obligate them in their property and they don't have a clue which is which. That's a little on the frightening side, I don't know about you. At closing, the lender has sent over several different documents. Two of them are the mortgage and the note. And at closing, as the borrower, you sign that mortgage and note, obligating yourself and your property to repay that debt. And you give that to the closing agent, who returns it to the lender, the mortgagee. This is not a bilateral situation. This is a unilateral situation. Bank's not obligated, you are the borrower. As a matter of fact, depending on the lender, you may not even have a signed copy. And by the way, if for some reason they'd have 3 or 4 copies of the notes on the table, don't sign more than one. Because every new note you sign creates a new debt.
Really?
No, I'm just making it up.
Is that legal?
Huh?
Is that legal? The sign of the sign of the- Hold on, the one that you have to really sign.
That's why they make the copies after you sign, not before. Who's got the original? The bank.
Yeah.
If you were the bank, do you want a copy or the original? Duh. But see, you're not thinking like a lender. You're thinking like a borrower, so it's not making any sense. Because what's on the board isn't about the borrower. What's on the board is about the lender. Besides grantor and grantee, seems to be the other OR that everybody has a problem with. And the reason is because you say, I'm going to the bank to get a loan. Or I'm going to the bank to get a mortgage. You're not going to the bank to get a mortgage. You're not going to the bank to get a loan, to get a note. You're going to the bank to get a loan. You're signing a mortgage and note to show that you promised to repay the debt. And if, just in case you don't, you're signing another document that gives the bank collateral, the mortgage. Will you have a copy of it in your important papers? Of course you will. Can you go into the clerk of the court's records and pull them up? Yes, you can. So I can know if you have financing before I even come out to take a listing on your house. Because the rules or the parameters of a mortgage and note are based upon the location of the property, not the location of the borrower or the lender. So I told you, you need to think like a lender in this. So, without looking at your notes, like you're not supposed to be doing, I have a couple questions. when it comes to financing, there are two theories. One's called lien theory and one's called title theory. Would Florida be a lien theory state or a title theory state? What do you think a title theory state would mean? That the bank has? Title. What do you think a lien theory state would mean? All they have is a lien against the property. They don't have title. Is Florida a lien theory state or a title theory state? Well, watch. Let's see if we can figure it out. How many of you own property in Florida? How many of you have financing on it? Do you have a copy of your deed? And it has whose name on it? Yours, not the bank's. So that means all the bank has is a lien against your property. Some states, they actually hold title until you repay. Which one of those two would you like better? Title theory or lien theory?
As a what?
Answer the question.
Lender or lien?
I said answer the question. Don't give me a dissertation.
Lien.
How many of you say that you would prefer a lien theory state? How many of you would prefer a title theory state? The answer is title theory because you're supposed to be thinking like a lender, not like a borrower. That's why I shut him up, because he was giving you the answer to the question. Usually if I shut somebody down when I'm asking a question, that should be a hint that the person's just blurted out the answer. See, it still goes back to, in my mind, I'm going to the bank to get a loan. I'm going to the bank to get a mortgage. And I'm not going to the bank to get a mortgage. I'm going to the bank to get a loan. So, what does the lender give you?
Money.
Nothing. He doesn't give it to you. His name is lender. It's not giver. He is not a charitable organization. You come to me and you want me to lend you $100,000 for 30 years at 9%, 3%, whatever it is. I don't know who the hell you even are. And I'm supposed to be happy that you showed up here today.
It's your job.
My job.
As a lending officer, you're paid to lend, not to say no.
Oh, okay.
I used to be a lending officer.
Those are the ones that are now defunct. Because early 2000s, you're absolutely correct. If you could breathe, if you could fog a mirror, they would give you a loan.
What, you make $1,200 a month? Sure you can have the 12,000 square foot home. We're just gonna take it back from you in 5 years when the market crashes. And your family's gonna be on the street, but that's okay.
That's pretty close.
They're pretty close, that come on, like sharply.
Yep.
Look up Lindsay Moniak. President's article.
I didn't know mine.
But see, this chapter is not about the borrower. This chapter is about the lender. Title theory versus the lien theory is a perfect example. The best way to remember it is to view it from the lender's perspective. Because then the title, the name, tells you what it is. So if I say it's a lien theory state, what is the lender receiving by getting a mortgage and note? They're getting a lien, and that's what Florida is. I think Georgia is a title theory state, but I'm not 100% sure. There are many more lien theory than title theory, in case you're wondering. Okay, let's go to the book. Let's go to page. Thank you. On 260, let's put a bracket around lines 6 through 16. There's where they talk about lien theory versus title. And right off the bat, it says Florida is, on line 17, it says loan instruments. What are the two main loan instruments? Promissory note and the mortgage. Let's go bracket from 16 through 8 on the next page. Yeah, you can start with 17. 17 through 8 on the next page. Take a second, we'll do that. Okay, correct.
The end of the page, and then on the next page to page 17.
Yeah, I know. And it's not that expensive.
Take the bus. As well as they have a regular bus service like most places.
Just for the ride. Oh, yeah, no, that's just for the ride. And then like with the, yeah, and then with bills and everything included. It's cool though. I got a deal because mom owns it.
But what way is
So she said, pick it up. I was like, all right. She was like, just remind me.
So what's the changes?
I'm gonna give you a deal when I sell it.
On the last paragraph on the page, which is the first paragraph of the mortgage, there's a term I'd like you to highlight and star. The term is the term hypothecation. It's on page 260, it's line 37.
You can find a place to go.
Who's got the attendance sheet?
Can you give an example of that?
Can I what?
Give an example of that hypothecation.
Yeah, we just finished. A 15-minute illustration. Because in a lien theory state, you are pledging property as collateral without delivering possession of it. So Florida is a good example of hypothecation. Same thing with your car.
I was just gonna say that.
It's ironic when I say it's helping out.
I just made my 360th payment. I now owe the bank nothing. Do they have to give me documentation that says the lien has been removed from my property? And do they have a certain time period in which to do that? It's 60 days. That's on page 261, lines 9 to 15. It's called satisfaction of mortgage. No, Brian. You know what?
I was
Right.
typing up.
Because it's part of these 2 pages.
Also, they redeliver the note, right?
Sorry?
They redeliver or they destroy the note? That you signed.
Yeah. Do they destroy it? No, they don't have to.
What do they do?
It has an expiration date on it,
Oh,
but it's not called expiration. What's it called? Maturity.
I'm not sure.
You see that is with your car. I know every time I get the statement each month, it reminds me that I still have until 2022 to bring this sucker home. Hmm? No, actually, I've had it. I didn't get it. I have the man out front that I drive, not my car. It's the lady's car. Your mortgage, let's assume you only have one mortgage on your property. Is it the superior lien on your property?
Yeah,
Yes.
No.
We already done this too.
IRS and property tax.
No, it's not.
IRS, forget IRS.
The property.
IRS
appraisers-
wouldn't be over the mortgage.
No, IRS is a junior lien, but the
Right.
property appraiser's lien is superior.
Estate tax.
Not state tax,
Sorry?
property tax, it's not
Property
state.
tax. is
Property estate,
superior.
yeah.
You don't pay property taxes to the state,
No, estate.
or estate tax,
Yeah.
that's federal. So, how important would it be
Okay,
for the closing agent, when they go to the courthouse and there are 2 mortgages on the property, because you've got a first and a second mortgage to purchase the property? How important would it be for them to make sure that they record them in the proper sequence? Because what would happen, if they switch the order, the second mortgage, which probably is the smaller mortgage, now has priority. I think that would probably bother the first mortgagee, with just a wild guess.
Usually before, that would have happened, the banks would actually just.
Sometimes, because of your credit or issues with the property, you were gonna go for 80% financing. Or you were going for 90% financing. Your rules just weren't. what they would do is they do an $80,000 first mortgage, which would help you avoid the private mortgage insurance. And then a second mortgage, maybe not even with the same lender, to get you to 90 or 95%.
But I thought if you don't have the 20%, you were gonna have the PMI anyway.
No, it depends.
I have 20% in the first mortgage. That's why they do it that way. Doesn't always make sense to do it. It depends on the circumstance. Now, let me clear up something here real quick. You don't decide or explain financing to your buyer. That's what your resource is for. People that do it every day. And the mortgage brokers got no business telling me how to write a contract. However, they do have the right to make me aware of their provisions that are going to affect that contract. It's on the second page of the contract. It takes up half a page. Questions on any of these? Let's go over to page 262. The next couple of pages get into a lot of terminology. Now, we want to look at this terminology from the perspective of the lender. The first thing it talks about is the borrower's covenants and agreement. What's a covenant? It's a promise to do or not to do. The first one is a promise to repay. Why would that be important to the lender? Because if they have nothing that says you promise to repay and you don't repay, they couldn't come after you. They might be able to take your house, but they couldn't come after you. So they gotta have something in there that where you promise to pay. The second thing is taxes and liens. Why am I so concerned about taxes as a lender? These being property taxes.
Because the property tax means the senior lien to the
Is a
mortgage.
street superior lien. And any other liens that have been recorded before the mortgage. The next one is property insurance. The bank doesn't own the property, why would they need property insurance?
Sure, against any hazard.
Because they have more to lose if your house burns to the ground than you do.
Yes.
You got a 95% loan, and it's a $100,000 scenario. The bank is risking 95,000, you're only risking 5. So they want to make darn sure. How do they make sure that you're paying your taxes and insurance? They escrow it, they make it part of your monthly payment, and they take that portion out and put it in escrow. Why do they have to put it in escrow?
Because it gets paid in November?
Because it's not the bank's money,
Right.
it's your money. But part of the provisions of you getting the loan is that you have to put part of the taxes and insurance away every month as a part of your monthly payment. As a matter of fact, at the end of the year, when they do the reconciliation, if there's more than a $50 balance, they have to return.
They send you the check back.
Yeah, I got one for
Because of the
11,000,
lawsuit that they had.
1,200
So,
a week, a year
excuse
ago.
me, so, in that case, if I'm the, have to be making payments for this escrow, I get an escrow account and I can make my payments without, like.
No, this is everything included in the mortgage. You're making one
Part of the
payment.
mortgage payment. The bank is holding on that mortgage and will pay your insurance and pay your taxes when they become due.
Sorry, but which taxes are you referring to?
Property.
But I pay the property taxes independently and I have a.
Which
one-
means your lender did not require you to escrow taxes and insurance. Some of them don't wanna hassle with it.
They charge more if you require it sometimes.
Well, no, there's a law that says the
That's
formula.
quite possible. I'm sorry? What'd you say?
No, she said they charge more
Yeah,
than
but
escrow.
what was your response?
And I said, there's a law that requires how much they can keep in reserve, and typically that's why they do the escrow analysis and refund you, because there was a lawsuit for interest not being paid
Right,
on the funds that was sitting there.
so not to have to pay the interest, they just send that balance back. The next one is occupancy. Why is the lender concerned about whether or not you have occupancy, that you're gonna live there?
Because otherwise gonna be an investment property, it's different. It's
Because statistics show what?
Oh, no.
That you'll make the payments on your home versus an investment property, if you have to pay one. So the likelihood of you defaulting on your residency is less
less than.
than on investment property. And I got a letter from actually it's not the lender, it's the servicing agent, that they were concerned that my insurance was not enough to cover the house. So I had to call the insurance agent I worked with.
Yeah, you
And
said.
he contacted the lender. And then the next month, I got the same letter again. I didn't get that letter yet this month, so I guess they gave up on it, I don't know. Then it says maintenance and covenant of good repair. That's why they send people out in areas where they have a lot of foreclosures. They'll drive around the community to locate those properties. In a foreclosure situation where you are able to do loan modification and save it, and you have to make X amount of payments for a period of time before they put you back on a regular plan. If you miss 2 payments, somebody will be knocking on your door. Because at that point, their assumption is that you may no longer be there. And of course, with that would pose just a small problem for them. Remember, this is lien theory. That means they now have to go through the foreclosure process.
And you don't pay.
And that costs the lender money. And they're already losing money. I know you have trouble having sympathy for them, but such is the case. Covenant against removal. There's a tool shed in the backyard. You decide that you're gonna take that with you. Guess what? In a foreclosure situation, not yours. You can come after that. Yes.
I saw a foreclosed property that the owner literally took the entire kitchen cabinets and the bank.
And all the copper tubing.
And the
Yes.
bank let it sit there for 3 years, knowing that they're losing a monthly payment and they can't get it. No lender is gonna lend on a property without a kitchen. They wouldn't invest even $5,000 in a Home Depot kitchen just to make it look like
Yeah,
like
so
a
it goes to
kitchen.
auction. Or
Yeah,
just
it
sits
goes to
there.
auction, or you find a
That's
cash
right.
buyer that's willing to.
It was crazy. It was a $500,000 house. Everything else perfect.
Oh, yeah, they got it
Just
for
no
$250.
kitchen.
If there was no kitchen. My buddy has a house in Acre, just 13,000 square feet. It was some guy that owned like strip clubs. And he shot his neighbor. So he went to jail for life and the house went into foreclosure. And he got the house for $180,000 and it was like a $12 million house. And it's sitting on 2 acres. It's insane.
Yep. Yep, those days for the most part are gone. You back up to about maybe the 2009, 2010. Because our recruiter that sits here, she was doing that full time. She was making a lot of money, and all of a sudden, it just started disappearing.
I mean,
Disappearing from the standpoint that the banks weren't looking to give it away anymore. They now want to get market
They're
value.
doing REOs,
Yep.
and you can get a list of them too.
At the bottom of the page, it talks about important mortgage provisions. The first one is a prepayment clause. And you'll notice at the top of the next page, there's a prepayment penalty clause. What's the difference between those two?
That you can pay your mortgage off before the actual date, there's a prepayment. The other one is, there's a penalty, you have to pay that in accordance so that they
And
collect
that
the
penalty
interest.
can be 6 months worth of interest, which is a big chunk of change if you're paying it off. You also, with a lot of loans, you're not allowed to pay off in a given year more than 20% of the remaining balance. Because the bank doesn't really want you to pay it off. The bank wants you to do what?
Continue
Keep
paying
paying
interest.
payments with that interest. The higher, the better.
that's how they make their money.
They're making money twice. The minute you close, it's sold on the mortgage-backed securities, and they make a fortune, and then they have you pay the note, keep paying, and they make
Yep.
money again.
They're not in the business of charity. They're not giving you anything. They're lending you money. That's what they do for a living.
Rothschild.
So if you have the means to purchase a home cash, you might as well do it.
No, not necessarily. Paying all cash is not necessarily the best financial move. Why? Because I've tied up all my eggs in one basket.
But if you have the comfortability, just take care of.
Are you talking about your primary residency or investment property?
Primary residences,
That's a different story.
it would definitely take care of primary residence.
It also depends on how old you are. Because if you're still in your income producing years, it probably makes more sense to take that money and put it somewhere else, or part of that money somewhere else, and maybe do a 15-year loan. You're at 40 or 45, and you do a 15-year loan, you're talking 50, you're talking 55 to 60. You have a paid off property, and more money from the other place that you put it. The next one, and let's put a bracket around that one, it's called the acceleration clause. What does accelerate mean?
Speeding it up.
Speeding up, okay? Who would use the acceleration clause, the borrower or the lender?
The bank,
Lender. And probably because of what reason?
default,
Default. You're not paying. You're not paying, they want their money back. And if we don't get our money back, we're gonna take your house and your little dog too.
right?
No place like that. No place like that.
You can never say my classes are boring. A lot of things are boring, and not one of them. If you get an acceleration notice, what's the next thing that's gonna happen? A foreclosure notice.
Sometimes you can.
However, in the state of Florida and other states, but we don't want to care about any other states, we have what's called the right to reinstate. What it means is, if I bring the loan current, I don't have to pay it up. But I may not be able to do that, because I've got attorney's fees from the bank, I got other expenses that the bank is incurring that they're dumping on that. The interest I haven't been paying is being dumped on that. So there's a lot of money there.
But depending on the lender, sometimes they'll do an installment for you to catch up.
Loan modification. Basically, it's a loan modification. The next one, which should have a bracket around it, is called due on sale. What does that mean? Means that your loan is not assumable. Meaning that the next buyer can take over your financing.
Can't you do that with cars?
Depends on what.
If the lender approves.
Quite honestly, conventional financing, you're gonna have a hard time finding a mortgage that doesn't have a due on sale clause in it. Which is why most conventional loans are not assumable. And by the way, what's due on sale mean?
Payment in full.
That if the title to that property is transferred, the bank has the right to call the loan. Call the loan. In other words, it doesn't have to be a sale. You added your spouse to the deed. You have changed title. Anything you do to change the title could trigger that due on sale clause. That's why you do a quitclaim deed and you may not initially record it. Because you don't want the bank to find out.
But they will though.
How will they if I don't record it?
Not gonna believe it, okay. But
Be the only way they find out. Unless my, neighbors ratted me out.
That's why you don't have a number.
can you not record it?
Yeah.
It's in writing.
Well, do you have to record a deed for it to be valid? You need to go back to that chapter and make sure you read this down, because nothing in that chapter says that I have to record it. I need to record it to protect my interest in it. I don't need to record it for it to be a valid document. The danger of not recording is, what if I lose it? What if it's destroyed? Then the ownership goes back to the last recorded grantee, which would be the person I bought it from. But there are certain circumstances where recording it would not be the prudent thing to do. But it has nothing to do with sales. So with that due on sale clause, and it means exactly what it says. That they can call the loan due upon the sale. It's actually upon any transfer of interest. The next one's called the defeasance clause. Yes.
I have a friend of mine that's going through a foreclosure right now.
They should probably talk to their lender.
Okay, but he actually wants to let it go. And I asked him how much money does he owe, and it's about 180. Would I be able just to take over?
Like I said, you need to talk to the lender.
Okay.
But the lender ain't gonna talk to you. Because of the privacy laws, the lender's not gonna talk to you unless your friend, or relative, whoever it was, gets a document that they signed that says that you can speak to the lender. Answer probably no. It may not be worth it. How much do they owe? How far are they behind versus what the property's worth? So, see, you have to understand that foreclosures and short sales are not necessarily great money. Because you also don't know what you're getting yourself into. You got a house that's been in default for 7 years. And even if the people are still living there, they're not taking care of it. Some are, some aren't. I have a feeling that I can't prove this, but I've seen people are in default, and have been for 6, 7, 8 years, and the bank hasn't come yet. But you wouldn't know it because their house is immaculate. The yard, everything's taken care of. See, the lender will skip over that one because it's being taken care of, to deal with one that's been abandoned.
Makes sense.
Because that one, I need to get rid of as quickly as I can, because the house, you ever notice a house deteriorates when it becomes empty? It's the weirdest thing.
It's amazing.
It's like it has a soul and it's not, and you just walk into it, and you just get that feeling that there's no life,
It's
because there is no life in there.
It's stale. Well, for one, they're not running the ACs, and it's in South Florida, so there you go.
Which means you may open the door to green.
Yeah.
They had one, it was a condo. They opened the door. It had been closed up for a period of time. They opened the
It
door,
coughs.
and the whole place was green mold. Shoes were covered with green mold. Welcome to Florida.
That's better than black.
Yeah, wax, that's good.
That house was bleached. They went into a Lysol.
When there was a lot of them.
Swiffer wet mops.
The bottom bit of the page, you've got the defeasance clause, put a bracket around that one if you will. No, it's not. The defeasance clause, who's being defeated? The mortgagee is being defeated.
Sorry, what was the question?
The question is, the defeasance clause benefits who? The borrower or the lender? The borrower. And if there's not gonna be a defeasance clause on the mortgage, the borrower has to be made aware of it in writing.
But this is something logical and then legal wording because you already paid the loan, right?
Good. That's why you probably won't see, at least in residential, mortgages without a defeasance clause. So if it's not gonna be there, they have to specifically get your acknowledgement that it's not there. And I think very few borrowers would wanna go for that. Okay, next page. If this is not a vocabulary test, I don't know what is. But most of the terms, reading their name and keeping it simple, you've got an answer. What are the two parts of a purchase price? What are the two parts of the purchase price?
Down payment.
The down payment and or and
Interest rate?
the loan. So could we refer to the buyer's or borrower's down payment as equity? What's equity? Is the person's money. Because your equity is somewhere between 0 and 100%. Depending on the type of financing you have. Equity means you're using your money. A loan means you're using somebody else's.
How do you account for equity due to increased value of the property over time?
As far as what?
I'm just, the value. When someone says, you know, how much equity do you have in your home and you've had it for 5 years, it's the amount you put
I need a
down.
market analysis or an appraisal to
Right.
determine the value.
Right,
And I need a statement from the bank as to what my remaining balance is.
so the down payment is only the beginning of your equity over time.
Your equity increases hopefully in 2 ways. Appreciation and
All right.
amortization. Meaning,
You're paying down the-
I'm making payments that have principal in them. And every time I make a payment, the part that's principal goes to reducing the balance. That's called amortization. Amortizing means to kill or dead.
and
Because
that's-
every time I make a payment, I'm doing what? I'm killing that balance. At a rapid pace, probably 25 cents the first 10 years.
But if you pay bi-weekly, bi-monthly, you're paying, over time, you can save 7 years in the mortgage.
Yeah, 7 to 8 years. Matter of fact, we'll get to that. On page 264, under mortgage features, it talks about the down payment, it talks about the loan to value ratio, and it talks about equity.
Where?
264, under mortgage features.
Okay. Sorry, my ears are still clogged.
Yeah. Yeah.
They are, it's like an echo, like I'm underwater.
If I want to know the loan to value ratio on a property, what information must I have?
The
Number and increase value.
I need the loan and the value. How do I know that? Because it says loan to value ratio.
LTV.
You missed this one, and I'm taking 10 points off your test. Now, in order to calculate, let's say that you got $80,000 worth of financing and an estimated value of $100,000. How would you calculate the loan to value ratio?
Divide the loan against the value of the property.
Is it loan divided by value, or is it value divided by loan?
Loan divided by value.
Why? Because that's what it says.
That's value right now.
When you have an answer that's a percentage or a ratio, which is the last step is always division. So if they're asking you to calculate a rate or a ratio, I don't care what the problem is. The last step is always division. Because to get a rate or ratio answer, you have to be divided. Because a rate or ratio is one number is a certain percentage of another. this ratio, most ratios, the formula is in its name. So what do they have to tell me in order to work this fund?
The amount you borrowed and then how much raise.
They have to tell me the loan amount
The amount of the loan.
and the value. Now, normally that'll probably be the price. And the, they may not tell you the loan. What could they tell you?
Ratio.
The percentage of down payment. Well, if they tell me the down payment is 20,000 and the value is 100,000, what's the loan to value ratio? 80%. Everybody okay with that?
Yes.
Let's start with that. Now, I know that, a lot of you told me that you're very bad mouth, so I will understand when you can't work a problem where they tell you the formula in the question. I can understand why that would be very stressful and very hard to be able to remember. You only have to remember the damn formula. All you have to do is read the question. The question is gonna set up the scenario, give you the numbers, and ask you to calculate the loan to value ratio. So I need to find the loan in there someplace, and I need to divide it by whatever they're representing as far as value. And mark the answer and move on. This is called a 30-second question. So at least your math won't be zero.
So put us off on equity 14.
No, loan to value ratio. What is the interest?
That's the compensation for the lender.
That's the lender's money. Because does the lender have costs when it comes to the mortgage and note? Yeah. Because if they're still holding on to the mortgage and note and doing their own servicing, they have to spend money every month making sure you pay. And then taking action if you don't. So think about the person hours that are involved sometimes when you look at it from the lender's perspective. And I'm not talking about making the loan, I'm talking about managing the loan or maintaining the loan. At the top of page 265, let's put a bracket around lines 4 through 8, where it talks about loan servicing. How many of you are making payments to somebody other than the people that made you the loan? I am. I started out with a local lender here in town. And one of the documents that you get as a borrower at closing talks about the percentage chance that the lender will sell that mortgage note. Mine was 0 to 76%. They should have made it 100, because it was sold before I got out the door. It was sold to Countrywide, which means in the future I got another letter from Bank of America, because they had taken over the servicing of the loan. Now, Bank of America does not own that mortgage note. I'll get to that part in a minute. And then, about 6 months ago, I got another letter from SLS Servicing.
Have a great night.
Now, they also do not own the loan, the mortgage and note. They're only doing what? Servicing. You can tell it by their name. Which means they're the people I deal with. If I default, the bank that actually has my mortgage and note ain't gonna do nothing. They take care of everything. They make sure that you pay your escrows, that you maintain the property. And they get a percentage of each month they get a percentage of the monthly payment. And that's how they get paid.
How do you start that type of business?
Anything services.
Well, first you'd have to get approved by the government.
So.
Secondly,
Yeah.
you'd have to have money.
Yeah, you gotta pay the governor off.
No, not pay it off, you gotta make sure you get set up correctly. Thanks to your predecessor. So that means, over the life of this loan so far, I've had 1, 2, 3, 4 places I've sent mortgage payments to.
Great for private.
That is called the assigning of a mortgage, which we'll look at in just a little while. On line 9 on 265, it talks about escrow or impound account. This we've already talked about. And it is an escrow account, because that taxes and insurance that they're collecting as a part of my monthly payment is my money. They have an obligation to make sure it gets paid each year, even if I'm in default. The bank is still gonna make sure that those taxes and insurance are paid. Why? They can't afford not to. Because we know that taxes are a superior lien, and what if the house burns down? I'm sure there have been cases where people torch the house. Figuring what? If I can't have it, nobody else will. And then on page 265 still, line 17, it's the term HIDI. What's it stand for?
Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance.
Principal interest, which is your mortgage payment,
And insurance.
and then a percentage of your taxes and insurance. Actually, 1/12. The next thing down the page is discount points and then loan origination fee. I'd like for you, starting line 30, put a bracket to the bottom of the page. In a minute, we'll talk about discount rates, discount points, and loan origination fees. But let's go to the top of page 266. And it gives you an illustration or a sample problem for the loan to value ratio, which you may want to put a star beside of. Starting with line 6 through 15.
15.
That's what we just got through doing. Starting with line 16 where it says use of discount points. Put a bracket from there through 22 on the next page.
Twenty-two, right? Next page.
All right, here we go. You walk into a lender and you want to borrow $100,000 at 3% for 30 years. This lender is not a portfolio lender. A portfolio lender is a lender who maintains the possession of the mortgage and note and does their own servicing. This lender most likely will sell this mortgage and note shortly after the borrower signs it. Now, who is this over here? This is the secondary investor, or one of them, that works with the lender. See, there are financial institutions out there who want to make loans in Florida, but they don't want to spend the money to open offices, to get approved to operate within the state of Florida. So what do? Instead, they buy the mortgage and note created by local lenders. But here's where the problem comes in for the borrower. That's the quote that came in today from that lender. And because of the characteristics of this loan, this most likely will be the investor they sell this mortgage and note to. The question is, what does this mean? It means that if the note has a rate of 3.25%, that investor will pay 100% of the face value of the note. However, if the interest rate is only 3 1/8, that investor will only pay 99 cents on a dollar. That means the lender just suffered a 1% discount. They lost money because they just gave you $100,000. Now they're trying to turn around and sell the mortgage and note, and they're only getting $99,000. They lost money. And given the interest rate you asked for, it's even worse. However, I don't think the bank is going to pay that discount. You are. They're called discount points. In this case, it would be 2 points. This was the one concept in the book that I didn't get when I was the student. And for the first 5 or 6 times I taught the course, I winged my way through this. Because when I first started, I know about as much as you do. I grew up on a farm, I was a phys ed teacher, and I like sports. Studying real estate was not anywhere on my list, or on my radar. Because I was teaching the course within 6 months of having taken it. I started taking it in January, and by July, I was teaching it. I don't know where the owner of the school's head was, thinking that somebody that don't know shit about real estate should be up front teaching. Now, I zipped through classes. I always had to make up something because I couldn't turn them loose too soon. Now I have the opposite problem. I could take 2 or 3 years to teach this course, which probably wouldn't go over well with you.
Learned a lot more.
Now, that lender has suffered a 2-point discount. And I think you can realize it's 2% of the loan amount. So in other words, if they sell this mortgage and note to that secondary investor, they're only going to get $98,000 for it. So that means they lost 2%, or 2 points.
How did you calculate that 2 points?
How do they calculate the 2 points? 100 minus 2 is 98?
Mine was 98.
Oh, okay. Sorry, it looks like 96 from here.
Okay, it probably does, yes it does. How about if we do this? That little bit. I don't even know what that looks like.
98.
How's that?
Much better, thank you.
Now, here's my problem. If I'm understanding this, as a borrower, to get that $100,000 loan, I'm gonna have to give the bank $2,000.
Extra?
My problem is, how the hell is that a discount? When I have to pay more money, how the hell is that a discount? And why did I think that way? Because I was thinking like a borrower. I wasn't thinking like a lender. And as the lender, if this secondary investor is only going to give me 98 cents on the dollar, you, if you want the loan, are going to make it up. You're going to pay 2% of this baby right here, and now I got all my money back. Because the investor gave me 98,000, and you just gave me 2,000. So I broke even. But shit, I don't want to break even. I want to make some money. So I'm going to charge you a 2% or 2-point loan origination fee. Here is where cost and profit are made.
The circle is complete.
Nothing was made here, I just recovered the discount. So that's why there's two different types of points. There's discount points, where you're making up for the shortcomings in the secondary market. And that is where I make my money. Because obviously I didn't make any money here, what? I got 98 of it back from the investor and 2 from the borrower, but that just breaks me even. Yes?
Okay. Now, with the loan origination fee, like, I'm just dealing with Chase.
Yeah?
They only had one set fees of about 95.
So, what's that got to do with this?
I don't understand it, that's why I'm asking you. I'm like, but they said.
They didn't charge anything, but they lumped them together. Yeah. Actually, it would be secondary investor, but which will get into the idea of talking about these people. We haven't talked about these people. We'll talk about them in the next chapter. Those investors out there.
So do we have to worry about this? Or is just, as a realtor?
No, as an agent.
Are you asking me about the test or real life?
Real life?
Yes. Because you have to communicate with mortgage people. And so if you don't speak their language, you won't understand what it means.
So do I have to be worried about the secondary market investors that are gonna get this loan eventually?
What do you
Know
think?
that, I guess, I do,
Why?
because you just said that we need to know the language. So I
Yeah,
can-
so I'm knowledgeable, so I'm not ignorant to what's going on.
Okay.
There are a lot of people out there that affect our lives. We need to understand how they play into it. Do I need to explain it to my buyers and sellers? No. All they want to know is how much and why. But see, this has nothing to do with us. This isn't created by us. It's not even created by the lender, it's created by the market. This market. What they call the secondary mortgage market.
Question, the loan was originated for 3% for 30 years, right? And then you put investors with 3 different
Right,
interest rates.
right. Because, listen, you say to me, I don't want to pay any discount points. no problem,
Okay,
no problem. Your rate is 3 1/4.
okay.
Well, wait a minute, I don't want to pay any, this stuff either. So now that means this is gonna go
So,
higher.
yeah.
So it's called pay me now or pay me later. Either way you wanna do it, you're still gonna pay me. Cause I'm in the business of making money. And I'm not gonna lose money so that you can get a loan. By the way, 3 3/8. It'd be 101. That means that if the note rate is 3 3/8, the investor will pay 101 cents per dollar.
Where can I see those indicators of how the market is behaving?
Say what?
The indicators of how the market is behaving?
What about it?
Where can I see
Perfect
them?
answer.
How can I know every day?
Yahoo or Google.
Go to
Bloomberg.
Bloomberg.
Yeah.
You got umpteen zillion channels that do nothing all day but
Oh, yeah, yeah.
give you bad news. You may want to take a class in economics.
I understand that.
And then you're gonna need to join the political science too, and that's gonna. So you basically want to be able to be knowledgeable in this, you'll have to spend a lifetime studying it. Like the guys on television. They didn't just wake up one morning and able to talk about the market. But you have to do that. It's a real estate market.
I like that guy from Batman.
How many houses in your community are for sale?
In my new community, none. I was the last one.
That was yesterday.
Let's wait to the other bubble.
See, once you get your license, at minimum, you should be able to tell me if I ask you what's going on in your community today. The MLS has programs that allow you for it to automatically do searches for you. So you can keep up with the marketplace. I mean, you've got plenty of data sources to be able to be knowledgeable in the marketplace. That's what separates an experienced agent from a new agent. I got a lot of new agents that are better at the paperwork and that side of the business. And they're good with people. What they lack is product knowledge.
Gotta know your product.
Which somebody's been doing this for 15, 20 years in an area, has tremendous
Yeah, knowledge.
product knowledge. But you know what? You learn over time. See, this business, people, has a beginning when it comes to knowledge, has no end. That's what I like about it. It's kept my attention for 40 years, because every time I think I got a handle on it, they start changing the shit. Then I have to spend time making sure I have some idea if I understand, like the new provisions for loans. I mean, we spend hours combing through that and really looking at it and talking to the mortgage person that's, part of First Trust Mortgage.
Dale, are you hungry?
Huh?
Are you hungry?
Am I hungry? I am hungry 20 hours a day. That's, you can tell that, because that's the problem.
I'm only. Are we waiting
Just
for
relax.
9:30? All right.
It's not time for break.
All right.
Half an hour, good. Hold on.
Yeah, I try to help
But
everybody.
again, where I had a problem with this, once I got by it, it was smooth sailing, is this one right here. It means that the borrower's got to cough up another $2,000 in addition to the other closing costs, and then they take this in, and there's another $2,000. So forgetting all the other closing costs, and again, depending on what rate you accept, they may still charge you the 4 points
Yeah.
and make more money.
You have to pay to lock the rate too, if you wanna.
Yeah. Well, which can be good, could be bad.
Yeah, exactly. Depending
You
on.
lock the rate and the rate goes down, whoops.
Yeah.
Oh, so if it goes down, you don't, well, it doesn't go down with it?
What does lock mean?
No, I know, but of course, can you unlock it?
No, once you pay, you pay.
Yeah, you could probably buy your way out of it.
So you end up spending the money anyway?
Yeah. Because you're talking to somebody who's in the business of lending money to make money, not a charitable organization.
So you got the money by your house cash. You know, it's money there.
So if you don't like the terms that I'm offering as a lender, use your own damn money. Don't come looking for mine for 30 years at a shitty rate, a lousy property, your credit looks like, never mind. And I'm supposed to be happy that you showed up today. See, but you laugh. That's the mentality you have to have in these two chapters. Because if you're not looking at this through the eyes of a lender, you can get thrown off in questions. But if you've never been a lender, guess what? That's easier said than done. That's why I started right off with it right up front.
The problem is not the lender, the problem is the employee working for the lender.
Well, they are the lender,
Yeah, I know.
just like the agents working for a real estate company. All right, let's continue. On 267, at the bottom of the page, there's 2 paragraphs that talk about assignment of mortgage. They are bracketed and they are starred, including the first paragraph on the next page.
Next page, on the 14.
Yeah, the first paragraph. We just got through talking about that. Right here. We looked at the mathematical side of it, but an assignment of a mortgage means that the rights in that mortgage note are being assigned to someone else. There's part of my story as far as the payments situation. I didn't tell you who actually held my mortgage and note. And has from the beginning. Mellon Bank out of New York. But they do not service the loan. I have never received any communication whatsoever from them.
How did you know that? It's Melvin.
It's in the public records.
They shouldn't inform you?
Hmm?
They shouldn't inform you?
They don't have to.
They don't have to.
That's what they're paying these other companies to do. See, they don't service their mortgage and notes. They just wait for the monthly checks to come in from the servicing company.
Because you don't have license to pay.
I don't know whether they do or don't. But they're not lenders. They are investors who invest in mortgages and notes. At least that part of Mellon Bank. Mellon Bank has many pieces. And that's the second time that Mellon Bank has been the holder of the mortgage and note when I did financing. I'm not quite sure why. And I've just never had the time to look into it. The word assigning, and we use that word even when we talk about contracts. Assigning means that I give my rights in something to someone else. Obviously, in this case, not for free. So basically, what's happening there is the ownership is changing. Ultimately, ultimately, it means nothing to the borrower. Why?
You're in-
Well, there's one difference, and you get a different address to send your payments to.
But when the stock market crashed, isn't that one of the reasons why some, or maybe a few were, the mortgages were dismissed when it was taken to court?
No, it's because they were fraudulent. I know a lady, that got a house somewhere out west. I met her at, Dunkin' Donuts. That's the kind of hangout over there, or one of them. And there is another.
For the
Oh, this is what I know from my in-laws, who are both retired, and 4 grandkids, and so they're always out and about out there. Now I forgot what I was gonna tell you.
There are some cases they went to court because.
Yeah, she owed $300,000 on a $200,000 home.
How much you owe?
The
300.
What was the property worth?
The attorneys for
Oh,
the lender could not produce the original mortgage note. Because they could not, the suit was dropped. And she now owns it free and clear.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. She probably filed a couple of mediations, a couple dockets, and, you know, they just gave up, they didn't want to put the money into the court battle.
Because there was a lot of fraudulent stuff going on as far as
I think a lot of-
signing the mortgage and notes. They made up properties, it's amazing the stuff they
It
did.
was also at the beginning of the electronic signature,
Right,
which became a problem.
right.
It's like when
Yeah,
you
there
lottery.
wasn't
And you
that.
still have some lenders who won't accept electronic signature. They require original signature.
But even if with the electronic signatures, don't you, at that time of closing, don't you have to be there in person?
No.
How do you go about doing
I don't have to be there. Typical closing today, nobody's there. They come in at different times during the day and sign the paperwork. Or they don't come in at all.
Or you said it.
But when you
They FedEx it to them and they have to go find themselves a notary. And they sign everything and the notary notarizes it and they send it back.
Or use a mobile note.
It's a different world. It used to be, I remember, early on, being in the business, everybody showed up at closing.
Why? That's what I remember when I first came home.
Well, welcome to the 21st century. Okay. You'll notice they make a reference on 268 on line 7, talking about downloading Fannie Mae's assignment of mortgage. Fannie Mae is one of the major investors in the secondary market. Fannie Mae sets the guidelines for residential financing. They even have an influence upon the loan application. If you look at a residential loan application, it'll have Fannie Mae's initials on one side and Freddie Mac's initials on the other. But we'll talk more about them next month. On the middle of page 268, which covers the rest of the page, they're talking about purchasing a property with existing financing. Now, we know in today's world, this can be extremely difficult unless you get into FHA and VA. They are typically assumable, provided that the buyer can meet the qualifications. The first of the two ways to obtain existing financing is what they call subject to the mortgage. If you took over someone's existing financing under subject to the existing mortgage, you would not sign a note. There's no need for a mortgage to be signed, there's already one there. So basically what would happen is, the seller would hand the buyer the seller's payment book. And the buyer would simply keep making the payments. Without a due on sale clause, as long as those payments were made and the taxes and the insurance and everything were kept up, the bank couldn't do anything about it. That kind of scenario is one of several reasons why the due on sale clause appeared.
But then at the end of it, and once it's paid up, what's to force the seller to hand it over to you if you're taking over and you're paying your name?
I already have it. I got the deed when we closed.
You hold the previous owner for the mortgage, but you give the property to another person.
Right.
Wait, what? I got confused, I lost.
It says subject to the mortgage. Here's what that means. The buyer would not be personally liable for repaying the debt, because the buyer in subject to the mortgage does not sign a new note. However, they are still subject to foreclosure through the mortgage if they don't pay. But they could never be touched personally. When you assume a mortgage, the buyer signs a new note, becoming the primary borrower,
So you do sign something?
not subject to.
Oh,
In subject to, I do not sign a note, because then it wouldn't be subject to, it would be assumption of. Subject to means I'm taking the payments over without signing a new note.
okay.
The only risk is if I don't pay, they can't touch me personally because I did not agree to make the payments with the bank. I made it with the seller.
And what?
But the risk that I run is if I don't make the payments, they can foreclose. So they can't come after me for a deficiency judgment.
You'll go after.
They can't go after my credit, they go after the previous seller. And then assumption of the mortgage, there's actually gonna be two notes. One signed by the seller when they initially bought the property, and now one by the borrower. So now they have two notes and one mortgage. In that situation, the seller would want a novation. The novation says that your liability is being
Transfer.
removed and transferred to the other person.
So then you're not liable.
Then you're not liable at all
Mhm.
as the buyer.
When do you
Yeah.
use this?
The subject to the mortgage
Yeah.
ain't gonna happen,
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
because-
kinda like, it's weird.
not gonna happen, because of the due on sale clauses. Yeah, maybe there's some private mortgages out there where it's not set up that way, but you know, we're going into the typical lender. First one will happen a lot. The second, I'm sorry, will happen a lot with FHA and VA, because they are assumable, provided, of course, that the buyer can meet the qualification. Yes,
Still subject to the mortgage. I've seen a number of times where, say, a parent is sick and dies, and the child or sibling or whatever is in the
Mhm.
property, they don't tell the mortgage company, and they continue to pay the mortgage note.
yeah.
And
Which
only
means that
if
they
they
can't be
don't-
touched
right,
personally,
and they don't
but
transfer
they
the
can,
property
yeah,
into their name.
but see, there's another example of why you wouldn't want to record the deed. Especially if the bank keeps sending information to the person that's now dead. Are you gonna call the lender and say, well, the person that you're sending to is now dead, I now own the property?
And property payment was only $800, but if I take it over, it's 12. No way.
Yeah.
As a lender, I would not like to sign an innovation for that case. I prefer to have two parties, if it's possible.
But, yes, but again, like I said, number one, rarely gonna see. And it probably will be a private situation anyhow, it won't be a sale. On 269, again, they bring up this due on sale clause. I think we kind of gotta handle what that is. And then it talks about the Stoffel certificate.
Neither of these have.
You need those, you may need this for several reasons. Number one, you may have to sign one of these as the borrower if that lender is selling that mortgage note in the secondary market. Because that secondary investor wants the borrower to acknowledge the debt and that they're paying it and they're current. If you were an investor, would you not want to know? It's like if you're buying a property that had tenants. Wouldn't you want a copy of the lease? Wouldn't you want the tenants to acknowledge that they are obligated to that lease and that they are current?
So is that a stop?
So it's kind of, yeah, it's a stop letter. A stop. We stop everything at this point, once in current status.
Like a balance sheet.
Especially when you buy, when there's a condo too, they need to stop a letter because they have to stop the maintenance and everything
Yep.
between the payments between them.
Or an HOA. Also on 269, you have something called a contract for deed. If I'm not mistaken, I think I see a star.
Oh,
The 19th.
The 16, what you saying?
Wake up.
I'm awake.
contract.
On 269, where it says contract for deed or land contract.
Okay, that one is the stuff?
If you're purchasing a property under a contract for deed, at closing, do you get the deed? No, you get a contract for the deed. Good thing it wasn't a thing.
Oh, man. Not again.
Now, this is something back when, for example, I had a gal in class, she had moved from the Detroit area during the downtime with the automobile business. And, you know, a lot of the factories and stuff that built cars were shut down. But then slowly but surely, things turned around and everybody got back working. The problem of it is, if they wanted to buy a house, they couldn't because they had no money. Because they'd used up all their savings and everything just to keep afloat until the factories opened back up. This is how she sold her home up there before she came down. They agreed upon a price, and I'm just gonna use some numbers, because the numbers are irrelevant. Let's say of $100,000. The buyer was pre-qualified for 90% financing, which means they only had to come up with $10,000 and closing costs. They didn't have a dime to put towards that. So what they did was this, they set up a contract for deed that said that the buyer would make $1,100 a month payments for 1 year. At the end of that year, they would now have their down payment plus additional monies to go towards
The loan.
closing. At that point, the lender was willing to step in and make the $90,000 loan because the down payment was now there. Yes.
At the new interest rate?
I don't know.
Okay, so They were living in the property and everything.
Yeah.
It's just that they have a contract with the city.
No, it's not an option to buy, it's a contract for deed.
And the bank is guaranteeing, and the bank is willing to wait 1 year
The
until.
bank doesn't care.
They.
They, initially, they pre-qualified the buyers so that within reason, we knew that these people would qualify. Now the only question is, are they gonna make the payments for the year like they agreed to? And if they do that, that's also a good thing for the lender, because the lender sees that they agreed to something and they've upheld it. So again, that would be a positive to get the lender to step in and make the $90,000 loan. But here's the danger.
Foreclosure process.
What if the seller has financing on that property and stops making the payments? What if there is no financing on the property and the seller comes in and refinances and pulls cash out? Because understand, in a contract for deed, the seller still owns the property. All the buyer has is an equitable interest in that property because of the contract for deed. The likelihood of you seeing this type of situation at this point in the marketplace is somewhere beyond zero, going down. The only reason I really get into it is for whatever reason I like asking about it. I'm not quite sure, but it's my mind's the reason why. The next section talks about land development loans and construction loans. What would I get a land development loan for?
To develop.
To build the house.
No, not to build the house. Land development is not to build the house. It's to put in the infrastructure. The roads, the street, the plumbing, the electrical. All that stuff has to be in place. And we may be having a problem with that because of Geo Home. They are building so damn fast. They just bought the municipal golf course off of Glaze Road, just west of the turnpike. And they're gonna have another community like the bridges. I don't know if it's gonna be called the bridges or not. But, I'm really excited because the traffic is gonna be,
Oh, and Seven Bridges?
yeah.
I just got a job in there the other day. That place is huge.
Yep.
There's like
And
waterfalls.
all that other agricultural land that's around it, guess who owns it? Geo Homes.
That
They're
neighborhood's
just gonna pick a chunk at a time.
crazy.
We
It's like
just
its
have to
own
figure
town.
out how to fight the traffic.
It's literally like its own little town.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
yeah. I hear that at the corner of Flintmore and 441, where Thomas's produce are,
So big.
their packing plant, supposedly on that corner, they're gonna put in another Delray marketplace like this down on Lyons and Atlantic. I haven't seen it in black and white, but I've had several people who usually have a pretty good handle on what's happening here. See, but these are the type of things that you need to be conscious of. Because it tells a buyer or seller that you're working with that you know your marketplace. I don't know about you, I really would feel much better working with an agent who knew what the hell they were talking about. And knew what was going on in the marketplace. I mean, you can't know everything. But as much knowledge you can get. I mean, today you got so many research tools that it's not funny.
Dale,
Mhm.
do you know Mitch Katz?
Who?
Mitch Katz.
Cat?
Mitch, he's the commissioner. Mitch.
I know of them, I don't know them.
And then,
On page 270, lines 22 through 26, he talks about something called a blanket mortgage. Yeah, put bracket up. I am a builder. I find a cul-de-sac with 8 lots. So I buy the 8 lots. I have 3 models, and we'll modify them. And so I start advertising it. I find someone, a buyer comes along, picks out one of the lots, and I build a house on that lot. Now, the loan that I obtained to purchase the property was a blanket mortgage, meaning that all the lots were put up as collateral. I always visualize this with my 4 grandkids with a blanket over them. Now, you're that buyer, and you're on lot 6, and you don't have them put in a release clause in your sales contract. And he goes belly up and doesn't build another house, and they come in and foreclose. If you don't have that release clause, you become part of the foreclosure.
Oh, wow.
So release clause is like an ejection seat
Mm-hmm.
to a fighter pilot.
In other words, if the builder defaulted, because of that release clause is there, what it allows to happen is that lot will be paid off on the first closing. Actually, they will usually pay off about 1/3 of the mortgage on the first sale. In other words, they're not gonna take, and take what they paid for the first lot, the second lot, third lot as they build. By the time they're probably 2/3 of the way through, with the closings they have for the ones they've already built, they would have paid off the mortgage. So in other words, if there was 10 lots, you don't pay it each time that you have a closing, you're not gonna do 10%. You might do 30% the first time. And of course, that all has to be negotiated, because depending on the price range that we're talking about, how much money is the builder gonna get out to be able to kick in that release clause? If there is no release clause, I don't wanna buy that property. As the builder, I know I'm gonna have a big problem if I don't have the release clause. Because number one, in order to free up that one lot, I'd have to do what? Pay off the whole thing if I don't have that release clause to let me release one at a time. So that's all part, that's all part of the negotiation with the lender.
Benefits both parties.
Provided nothing goes wrong. At the bottom of the page, they talk about foreclosure. I'd like you to put a bracket around on 271, next page, lines 1 through 12.
Nothing in the 270?
No. How many documents do we have when we talked about financing here? Two, the mortgage and the note. So how many documents can they come against if you default? 2. One lets them go after the property. The other one allows them to go after the mortgagor. Well, that kind of makes sense. If you got a promissory note, whoever promised is liable. If you put up something as collateral, like the house, then the house is liable. On line 31, it talks about a short sale. What does that mean? Don't read it. Tell me what it means.
Less than money are they owe.
Right. If I go to sell the property, my net will not be sufficient
To cover.
to cover the balance of the loan. That's why it's called a short sale. if your buyer wants to do a short sale on a property, make sure they talk to the lender that they're gonna get the loan with. You need to communicate with whoever has the listing to find out what the application requirements are, what type of time frame you're working with. When these things first started, we had one that went 3 years before it finally closed. Short sales are a royal pain in the butt. If your buyer wants to do a short sale, they need to be read the Riot Act. Because they better be willing to set their little fanny down and wait anywhere from 3 or 4 months to maybe a year.
In these cases, the bank allows the actual owner to sell it, right? Discount.
Yeah, well, the actual owner, yeah, it's not a foreclosure. So the bank does not have the ability to sell it. It has to be sold by the seller. They dictate the price and terms.
The bank.
Yes. Those like foreclosure sales are on the way down as far as the amount.
But that affects the person credit-wise.
Yeah, of
no matter
course.
what, right? I mean,
Yeah.
foreclosure or the other.
But you know what, a short sale is much better than a foreclosure. Neither one of them are great, but foreclosure is more deadly than a short sale. Bottom of the page, deed in lieu of foreclosure is exactly what it sounds like. I'm gonna offer the deed to the bank instead of having them foreclose and take it away. Then, of course, I hear your wheels spinning. Well, how often does this occur? Every 1 out of 2,460,310, I think. Top of the next page, income right. I bought an 8-plex. And I'm making my payments and everything. And then, for whatever reason, I decide I'm not making any more payments. So I just take the rent each month, stick it in my pocket. I have a feeling the lender would have an issue with that. I'm not maintaining the property, and I'm not paying them. All I'm doing is collecting the rent, waiting for them to show up. Well, they will. Actually, they won't. A receiver will. They will go to court, using the receivership clause that you mentioned here, to have the courts appoint a receiver who goes in and takes over the management of the property until the property can be foreclosed and sold. And then the last one here, or we end the chapter, take a break, is the list pendants. Translate that into plain English, it's that there is pending action against the property. If you see a list pendants filed against the property, you probably got a pretty good chance that the next document filed will be a foreclosure notice. And again, I can find all this stuff in the clerk of the court. Okay. I think that's enough fun for a while. While we take a break. Do me a favor, if you will, please make sure that door is closed.
necesitas. ¿Sabes qué fue?
I gave me checks, like, I wrote a check on him, and then I wrote a check.
Very capital.
Yeah, so she was like, she texted us, she was like, on October 22nd, she said her birthday. I think we are still to know when the cars we are there.
I think I missed a few pages. Well, that's
Monday night, I stopped at 2:40. Did he have any more brackets or actually we stop at 2? Oh, you don't have your book? So,
Let me actually, you guys.
Prohibido las clases. ¿Qué tal? ¿Ah? Pensé que no venías aquí. Que yo, si no venías ahora, te echas aquí. ¿Cómo a todo? ¿Pero crees que puedes terminar? Hace el esfuerzo. La verdad que recorrerlo, he perdido muchas horas ante mí. Sería bueno. A veces se puede hacer no, pero bueno. No buenamente. ¿Ah? Hay que estudiar bastante. ¿Cómo va a ir? No es fácil. No es fácil, mi hermano. Como
I know, but they have an opening in the West. Actually, that is the case. He couldn't move to Denver. He didn't think back.
But I was thinking that if I did it, I would make it. It is.
I don't think you can have
The one that he did the last time I got it.
In red.
I got it.
And they just changed it.
I just divided it in the end.
We're still in chapter 2 as far as, well, not just itself, yeah. Starting from, yes, from chapter 1 to 3. I'm hoping that we can go straight to the point. Because we're not asking questions.
I have a problem with my toilets in California, but the thing is,
The review.
I'll
Bring all my questions.
surgeon at,
Yeah, that way they have to come back, instead of having like Monday, Wednesday, and
a
wait.
huge dog, which is a pet that wasn't a service animal or emotional care or anything like that. I didn't make us think about it, I just, decided that I would leave instead of, and I rented it out, and then moved across the street to a single family property. I know they have a lot of problems with people complaining about dog and stuff, But is there a signature office in Huntington Lakes itself? No, only in the where they service Huntington Lakes and Point and all that. And then,
I think there's one in Kings Point.
yeah, there's Kings Point separate, I think, too. But for the one on the plaza, Hawkins Plaza, they call it Medieval, it's service Medieval and they Huntington. So I have to talk to them.
Para ser distinto. Hacer las cosas de otra forma.
I live like, West Gate. So like one closer to
Mickey Mouse.
Yo tuve una vez para comer una quimera, no conté por ella.
Cuando uno ya sabe que se le gustan las cosas.
Did your homework?
Where's our?
What's your seat in the shower?
Forgot.
Got child support.
See, and that's what you'll be dealing with. My only one, she's very independent. My youngest one, she's
My cousin used to chime in on that. My uncle told her, what did you say?
That's the oldest sister, you gotta show some respect, you know?
Otherwise, I don't know how much I'm supposed to transfer. But it's no longer Tuesday. And, well, I have the deposit, which has been sitting in escrow.
Right now, the rent's on.
And now she sent instructions
I
on
love kids.
what to do with escrow.
You have some?
She didn't send.
Almost.
Some, you know, gotta say it like that. Yeah, some.
have like five, I actually have 5 dodges.
There, who's obviously not
I was
interested
gonna have a kid 2 years ago, but my
and
kid
has
died.
no clue.
I don't want to.
So she sent me a encrypted thing that if I do, we have to write it down and then go into
Ever
it.
since
And
then,
I
I've been
haven't
just like,
been around to do it. And I think I have to do it on my computer as opposed to my
you know,
iPad. So.
kind of makes you grow up.
Maybe I would.
I don't even have the wire. I don't know which one to do. Yeah, they don't take checks anymore, they don't take the bank check. Really? Yeah, not here in Florida, not here, I don't know if it's.
I don't know why that's
It's
so.
like, I was just gonna put it back.
I only got him the same outfit as me.
I don't want a wire transfer, I don't know, but it's like, they make the truck. What's gonna happen?
I would have dressed in everything I got. I spoil my nieces though. My nieces love it. I buy them easy things. I've been doing all this stuff for them.
Is there no truck? Although I have to say, that's.
Don't even like my little
They stopped to my account, and they want to verify if I did purchase it or not.
Plus, all in all, it was
So, my big one is, you can't go to they could try it, because I don't have it by my my lights was $75, my kids, everything.
They picked it out, they wanted it. Now they want to make it, braids now.
So I told them that,
That's my daughter's too.
that's been, they've been, whatever.
Me too, right now.
I have.
Sound great how it makes sense, and they're just like, whatever. They don't
So I said, listen, I just wanted to.
I'm glad they have it.
I stopped drinking.
And it was their
I had it
logo.
quick.
You still go? Yeah. Everybody making money and so I'm always putting the stuff outside the days of the candy and it's a little discounting because you guys know the neighborhood, you know the neighborhood. So
I
that's
gotta do it 'cause they do it.
yeah. And then that was money with the wine, with the, yeah. Like it's really, you know, like not even.
Well, if I take this thing over, it's
I thought my buddy was answering the door and she was over. I was like, trick or treat. I was like, here you go. Katie, the guy was like, bro, chill. Let me come in real quick. It was so funny. They're like, yeah, what's that? He's like, tobacco.
But when you click on to the, yeah, at the bottom.
Always Friday.
Yes.
Always Friday. Yeah, no, it doesn't like you. I wanted 11 and 8. 11 and 8, yeah, I have 11.
Are we showing babies?
You care about your baby, yeah, like, it's right here, like,
There's a little click on, if this isn't you, click here.
give us some smile.
Personal thing that you have.
It's all the same.
Say hi, say hi.
Sobre todo la bebida, de la bebida de chocolate. Sí, sí, sí. Las tres. Nos ponemos a las 3 pero casi. El dormino, vamos a dormir la boca. Ahí va la necesidad básica que hay que suplirla.
Okay, we went to sit.
Como que van a ganar el libro en discount points, que no origination. Es una forma distinta, ¿no?
So you did it. I'm afraid there's
Okay, let's go to chapter 13.
Is next week our other book?
Huh?
Is next week our other book?
Yeah.
We have a week left.
Sí, bueno.
But we have more to.
Oh, good. Do you have something for Harper?
Actually, I do.
Can I please have some? I'm serious, man.
So I'm telling you.
My heart feels like a flag went off my chest.
You guys let me have one more thing.
That's not wrong. Can
Can I borrow 2G? Can I borrow 2G?
I work for this company too. I just gone through the real estate, I just did the remodeling.
Which is hard for
Page 278, if you will.
278.
No, I'll take one.
Yeah, I got you. You got it on back, man. I just opened it. I know you're from the south. No way you don't like salt. Come on, let's go. Luck. 2 seconds. Eat it, bro. I'll wait too.
5 seconds.
Yeah. I give it 10 seconds, so 5 more seconds after you do 5. Like yo, my dad thought I was crazy.
You don't know about the 5
I was in New York City. I was in New York City and I dropped my ice cream and it was still in the cone and I just picked it up and continued eating. Yeah. You could, a New York ice cream is like $12. You're gonna eat it. Yeah, 1 scoop on a cone is $12 in New York. Yeah, there's a chance I'll eat that. Exactly.
And the man.
New York or $20 black. I'm supposed to cigarettes. I don't know. I sound like the guy out of Toy Story. Little penguin.
So you missed all your math, you still got 20.
I'm telling you, just yeah, well, I'm gonna do
State exam.
You know, now I'm gonna rate it.
But you also get an extra half an hour. Take your test. State exam. Okay, let's get back to it. I have to tell you my potato chip story. When I first moved down here, I taught at Pahokee High School. Now, this was the late 70s, so understand the environment at that point. But they were the best kids in the world, really, to deal with. And the problem is the same problem I have with adults.
Is that so
They are always eating in class. And so I would, if they start eating, I would take the bag and put it in the trash. Well, guess what? Well, what they do at the end of class? They go get it out.
Oh my God.
They're not gonna waste that food, are you kidding me? So one day, I never forget it, the kid was sitting right over here. And he had, at that point in time, my favorite potato chip was barbecue.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a bag like he had a barbecue. And he started, pulling one at a time. And I said, give me that. Because they knew they weren't supposed to eat. So he figured, okay, no big deal, he's gonna throw it in the trash. I took it up and put it on my desk, and I ate every last one. And then I looked at him and said, can you bring more tomorrow? You should have heard the hallway between the next two classes. Everybody warning and anybody going to Mr. Doyle's class.
Bring 2 bags of chips. I came with a whole pack for you, man.
But I never had a problem after that.
My teacher
Somebody, if I looked at them and they had food, and they could keep it under their desk, that was fine. I didn't have a problem. I didn't expect them to throw it away because they didn't have enough time on break to eat it. But they were not gonna eat it in class. So now we'll try that with you. It won't work with you. You'll just get mad at me and call up Ben and bitch and complain.
Yeah, right. I'll just bring you food too.
But that was hilarious. It's just something that popped off the top of my head because, you can only, yell at them so much and then you might as well be yelling at the wall because they don't hear you. All right, on page 278, 279, it talks about conventional mortgages. What makes it a conventional mortgage?
It's a fixed rate.
No,
It's for a certain,
no,
it's not insured, guaranteed. It's for a certain amount of years.
are you ready? It's not FHA or VA.
That's it?
Because there's 2 categories, or 3 if you want to argue, there's government loans and there's conventional. And there's only 2 types of government loans, FHA or VA.
What's Fannie Mae?
Fannie Mae is a secondary market investor. Used to stand for Federal National Mortgage Association, and then they shortened it to Fannie Mae. And Freddie Mac is. Fannie Mae was originally created to buy mortgages and notes from banks so they would have more money to make loans. Freddie Mac was created for the same reason, but for savings associations rather than commercial banks. See, the government actually initially created the secondary market. The secondary market in financing is being able to get money to the primary lenders and giving the primary lenders a way of disposing of their mortgages to get cash so they can make more loans. This all started in 1934.
Great year.
Can anybody tell me why?
The new Ford Model T came out. They make.
Yeah, no, had nothing to do with cars.
24? 34.
34.
Prohibition ended?
Yeah, my parents were married.
Oh, World War II started.
No,
Oh, no, that ended then.
FHA was created. And FHA was the first 30-year fully amortized mortgage. Which did what to the average person's ability to buy a home? Put it to the ceiling. Because that was the whole idea. And then, what happened there is, now the lenders were running out of money. Because more people could qualify. And it took longer for the lenders to get their money back. So that means the government agency caused the problem. What's the government do when one agency causes the problem? They create another one to fix it. That was Fannie Mae. She was originally designed to buy mortgage and notes from the lenders so they can make more FHA loans. Her role has changed slightly since, but that's the beginning, and we'll go into that in a little more detail later. When you talk about qualifying for a loan, we know that they look at your loan versus, or your income versus your expenses. And there are two types of ratios. One of them is called the housing expense ratio. That ratio basically includes principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, and if you're an association, maintenance. No, it's part of that. That's why I say pity me. Me standing for the maintenance payments you have to make. Conventional does not use the housing expense ratio. The only ratio they use is the total obligations ratio, which is mentioned in your notes there. I think it's on the next page. When we get to FHA and VA, we'll talk about them and then we'll look at all three of them. But the only ratio they use is total obligations. And there's a certain percentage that when you max out. And we have a chart that actually shows all of them.
Wow, they can include the child support payment?
If it has if it's an income that has longevity to it, then yes, that could be included. Tell me the formula to calculate the total obligations ratio.
Total individual debt over total income.
Say that again?
Total, debt divided by total sources of income.
You heard how she said that? She said it to the ratio. And she told me the two parts of my formulas. Total obligations and gross income.
Obligations are the debts.
Now, where do the obligations come from? Your credit report.
Some exceptions.
So, where people get in trouble a lot of times is not the PITI, but is the total obligations. So a lot of times they're okay with the housing expense ratio, it's in line, but they're way out of whack. Because, we got $50,000 worth of credit debt. I got 2 car payments of $1,250.
Wow.
What are you driving, a Rolls Royce?
No, it doesn't take that much.
No. Specially designed Corvette.
Oh, yeah, the mid-engine, yeah.
I have one of the specially built.
I wanna get the cab
It
companion.
had a 73 front back end and a 81 front end.
I like the Callaways.
I don't like the new ones as much as the old ones.
No, the old ones are where it was at.
You'll notice at the top of 279, again, it mentions down payment and loan to value ratio. Because the down payment and the loan to value ratio is what creates your price or your value. And then on lines 10 through 22 is where they, actually through 29, they show that total obligations ratio.
Is this an star or not?
No.
No star.
A star.
On page 280 and 281, they talk about amortized mortgages. If they tell you you have an amortized mortgage, what do you know for sure is part of your monthly payment?
Principal.
Because interest does not amortize anything other than your wallet. Because amortized means that it's killing it. And which portion of the payment is killing the balance? The principal. So we know that if they tell, I don't know what type of amortized mortgage it is, but if the word amortized is in its name, I know for sure there's interest, there's a principal payment. And I got about a 99% chance that there's also an interest. Which is your typical loan that you get to buy your home. If I said to you that you have a 30-year loan, what's the amortization period?
30
The time of the payment, the period of the payment.
30.
30 or 15.
What if I said to you, the amortization period is 15 years. The loan term is 30.
Oh,
They have
that's,
to pay, the 5 year, 15.
Is that a balloon?
The balloon. Because there's two terms. There's the amortization period. And then there's the term of the loan. You could have a 15-year amortization with a 30-year loan. But that means it's going to mature in 15 years. But there's a problem. We would have not fully amortized it by the 15th year. Therefore, there will be a balance that will have to be addressed.
What is that?
So when that happens,
Right now, I don't want to talk about when these would be used. I want you to understand what they are. Don't worry about when they're used at this point. Generally speaking, these type of mortgages, you're not going to see much of.
So that means that you have to pay up, the amount, the balance that you have to go.
Or refinance or something, but the bank has the right to call that loan in. They may offer to extend it. So a 30-year fully amortized mortgage means that those payments are set up so they will make equal payments, that when the 30th year gets here, and they make that last payment, everything goes to zero. A partially amortized means that the term of the loan is shorter than the amortization period. So I got a 15-year term, a 30-year amortization, which means I'll be making payments as if I had 30 years to pay it off. But the loan term is only 15, so at the 15th year, obviously I have not paid off the balance. I paid off, the loan. I will have to figure out what to do with the balance. I mean, there's obviously a lot of answers to that. You can finance, you can sell it. In an amortized mortgage, does your payment typically change each month?
No.
Your principal and interest payment, unless it's an adjustable rate, never changes. The co-payment made because of your escrow. Right now, escrow is not part of the discussion. Does the interest portion of your payment increase or decrease each month?
Decreases.
Yeah.
It decreases.
Decreases because the principal.
Why
decreases.
does it decrease?
Because the principal.
Because the principal balance
The balance.
went down. Because we're always paying interest on the remaining balance. So that means the first payment is almost all
Interest.
interest with a little bit of principal, and the last payment is just the opposite. It's a whole lot of principal and a little bit of interest. If I asked you to calculate the balance after the third month's payment, would you have to figure out what happened in month 1 or 2 to be able to tell me what happened in 3? The answer is yes. Because every month, things change. Some things are going up, some things are going down. This is a very popular app. And so yes, the 2 pages of 280 and 81 are a start.
Start. 280 and
280 and 281. Now, put your calculators away. I'll let you know when you need it. It says I've got a 30-year loan of $30,000. The interest rate is 8%. The monthly payment of principal and interest is $220.13. They're asking you to determine what the balance will be after the 4th month's. Let's change that to 3.
So it's 29,420.
So it's 220 and 13 3 times.
You would have been better not to say anything at all.
Well, I can give it a try.
That's why it's me.
Because there's no principal in the.
Now, I've already set this up, and I don't know where your brain is, but it must be fried right now. Now, everybody ready to play?
Yeah.
If not, there's your 69. For those of you that don't like math, you had best be participating during this session. Not an option. Those of you that are good in math, pay attention and don't let your ego cost you a 769. I'm an equal offender. My fear with questions like these questions actually are extremely easy problems to work, because they have a pattern that doesn't change. They can't trick you.
So the first month's interest is 200?
The key to this, however, is being organized. It's very easy to get lost if you've got numbers scribbled all over the page, because I gotta do 3 months to answer that question. That's, as you will see in a minute, that's 9 steps. So it's very easy if I'm not organized to do what? Skip a step somewhere. So here is what you need to study.
What's that last word?
Interest. Now, there are 3 pieces of information they must tell you to work this problem. They have to tell you the original balance. $30,000. Which goes, because until I make a payment, the balance is $30,000. What else do I know? I know the payment, 22013.
The inverse is 8%.
Why did I do that?
Because it's.
Because the full payment never changes.
Yeah.
Because there's no escrow played into here. That's what's not a part of this process. What else do I know?
Interest.
The interest. I don't know the interest.
No.
I know the interest
rate.
rate. Now, in order to complete the first month, there are 3 things I have to do. What's the first?
Count the interest.
Calculate the interest.
Does that keep underpayment?
Can I comment that?
Hmm?
If you know that the payment that's including the principal and the interest, why do you have to calculate those?
Well, when I get through, you'll have an answer to that.
Principal balance and annual.
Well, I don't want you to read out of the book. I told you to stay out of the book.
I actually did,
You actually did.
following the formula.
Once I know the interest, what's the next thing I have to calculate? The principal. And what's the third thing I have to figure out?
And then the balance.
Balance. And I have to do that for every month. What's gonna change
The principal.
every month? The balance,
The interest.
the amount of interest you're paying, and the amount of principal. Now, the bad thing I just did is, I just gave you the formula. Because the first thing you have to do is figure out the first month's interest. Once I know the interest, I can subtract it from the payment to get what? The principal. And then that's how much the balance goes down. So the first step is the loan balance times the interest rate divided by 12.
Because that's once a year.
No, it's because we calculated the annual interest on 30,000. So we have to divide that by 12 to get what it translates into. Well, it comes out to 2,400 if you use annual. That wouldn't make any sense in the chart.
What did you just say prior? You said you have to take one thing to get the balance and then 12. That's all I remember.
Loan balance.
Well, you just tied 3 sentences together.
Yeah.
Balance times the interest rate.
Now, everybody look at this. Everybody use ears, eyes, no mouth. I told you that this is the first thing you have to calculate every month. This is the second thing you have to calculate every month. And this is the third thing you have to calculate every month in that order. Now, what I have to do is figure out how do I calculate the interest for a month. I take the rate, which doesn't change, and I multiply it by the balance remaining. Well, first month, the whole balance is remaining because we haven't made a payment. So in this case, this would be 30,000 times 8% divided by 12
Which is 200.
gives me 200. You don't have to push the buttons, people. Pay attention. I think I've got the numbers down. I've only used this example 500,000 times. But I say that, and this time I won't remember what the numbers are. Now what do I do?
Calculate the principal.
So
Calculate the principal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, wait a minute.
Why is 200?
Yeah, what is?
For the first month.
It's 20. The interest can be 200, and the payment is. Principal and interest. But that's what I'm saying.
Let me ask you a question.
The first.
Take 30,000 times 8% and divide it by 12 and tell me you don't get 200.
Okay.
It's the first month you didn't pay
So
anything
the
to bring it down.
payment.
But wait a minute. I told you when we first started this that the principal at the beginning is going to be very small. Maybe I wasn't close enough and you didn't hear that.
Oh my
This
God.
is a concept, people. That's what math is all about. That's why you can't do math. You don't look at the concept, you look at the freaking numbers. The numbers don't mean anything.
He said.
I can use any number I want to use. It doesn't change the process. And this process has been the same for 40 years. So please try not to screw it up or come up with a new idea. Why can't we do this?
You guys are pissing off the colonel.
Why is 200?
So the balance is 29,000.
Oh, no.
Wait.
Let's get that chart there. So this is how much I paid.
Okay.
Based upon that balance, that's how much of it was interest, which means $20.13.
Wow.
No,
And these are,
either or, because,
no, it's not either or.
no, because he put 13 on the interest.
213.
So it has to be,
The interest was 200.
okay.
Oh. Much better.
Now what do I do?
You will,
I subtract $20.13 from, which comes out to 29, 979, 87? Now what do I do?
You come to it, you put that balance in the second.
And might do me a favor, if you're not looking at me, you're gonna miss this on the class test. Thank you. I won't erase it, you can write it down and I'm through. And, like I said,
You use that balance.
that balance now has to go where?
For the second one.
For the second month. Cause I don't owe 30,000 anymore, so I'm not gonna pay tax, interest on it. No.
Same formula,
This
right?
is-
For the second month, it's 29,970.
Right. So 29,9, 79, 87.
Apologies, I don't.
Should be 87.
Mr. Dell.
Yes.
Let's go back to, I got the $200 from the division 2,400 divided by 12, 200. What did you get the 2013?
I took the payment, subtracted the interest.
The interest is 200 and the leftover is the principal.
See, the minute I calculate the interest, I automatically know what the principal is. Because it's the difference between the interest and the payment.
Oh, so the payment from the interest, okay.
And that's what you do, first step, every month. Now, once I have the interest, it allows me to figure out how much of the payment is principal. That's for, and then this one, I think, is one,
So the formula follows through for each column?
yes. Yep. Because you're doing the same thing in each one. So whether you have 1 month or 200 months,
For each month.
each month you follow that process. All right, this 22013 minus, this is, and what's the interest for the second month?
19986.
86?
I'll round it up for 87 because it's 5/8 at the end.
It's 87?
It's 5/8 at the end, so.
It's 5, so that's
He rounded it up.
5, 6.
It's 8, and what's that number after 8?
6,
6, what's the number after 6?
5.
5, 7.
It stays at 6. Round up.
Why 7?
So we.
Because I rounded it up, because it was 5 or more.
Oh, 5.
So it should be 6.
No, but when it's 5, you round it, I think so to the bottom.
If it's 5, you round it
If
up.
you round it, yes, and if
Round
it's
down.
more than,
Oh, 5, then you round up.
from 1 to 5, it's a lower number.
86?
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
I don't really care about the numbers. Now, how do I figure out how much the principal is for the second month?
Divided by 12 to get the monthly. So it's like this.
19986, 5/8, so you're
It's
gonna
20,
I think that's off the
13
metric
went to
system.
principal. Okay, that from
I know what you're talking about.
you take in the principal on that, please don't do that. 20.
Yeah, just good.
When you guys get through, you let me know, and I'll keep, I'll continue. Doesn't sound like it.
Oh, that's.
And the people are the same across the board.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you take the rate times the balance, and then you divide the interest by 12 after you get that. And you just continue to do that along the whole line, and you just continue to use the top balance.
Same 3 steps every month.
Okay, so just study that way of doing
Formula.
things.
Practice setting up the chart.
Okay.
The formulas are on page 281. Well, being the fact that nobody's listening to what I'm saying, I might move on to the next topic. Because I told you I didn't want you to do the math, the arithmetic. I wanted to show you how the chart worked, but I know that wasn't important. Let's move ahead, if we can, to page 282. The bottom of 282 and the top of 283 talks about another type of mortgage called an adjustable rate mortgage. I'm gonna take a wild guess that this means that the rate could change. Whereas what we were talking about here was a fixed rate.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Maybe, depends. It depends on the market, depends on the borrower. I mean, there's a lot of factors that come into play. In an adjustable rate mortgage, there are 2 components that create the rate. If you'll notice, they're at the bottom of page 282 and the top of 283. The first one's called the index, which is basically the cost of money in the marketplace. And the other one is the margin, which they also refer to as
Spread. Spread.
Spread, thank you. Yeah, it's there in parentheses. That's why I didn't see it. Now, the question is, God bless you. The margin, by the way, which is typically 1 or 2%, normally does not change. It's the index. If there's any change in the adjustable rate, it's the index that's causing it. The index has to be a published index so that the public can what? Can see what the rate was and what it is now. If I'm not mistaken, when you get to the point in the year where the rate needs to be adjusted according to the market, they're supposed to use the index that's 30 days back from the day that the adjustments were supposed to be made.
Can you repeat that last sentence?
Yeah. When calculating the change in the interest rate, they have to look at the index. Like I said, typically the margin is fixed. They started out year 1 at 2%, year 2, 2%, 3%, 2%. Every year is the same. It's the index that goes up and down. But the question is, at what point in time do we pull the index? It has to be 30 days back from when the adjustment will take place. So if the adjustment is September the 30th, basically, they gotta go back to August the 31st. That's 30 days. And whatever it is on that day is what the index will be for that year. That will be added to the margin to get the rate.
That will be added to the 1 or 2% on top?
I'll show you what. Now, let's assume that the index for year 1 was the index for year one was 3%. Let's assume that that this lender is using a 2% margin. The margin is where they make their profit and cover their cost. Because the 3% is the cost of money in the marketplace. So that is not where their profit comes from. Or the cost, the money's to pay for the cost. Now, assuming that this is a 1-year adjustable, at the end of the first year, we now have to go back to the 30 days before the adjustment day and see what the index is. The index has jumped to 7.
Keep crying.
So that means the rate, the adjustable rate, was 5% in year one. It's now 9. But that was when it was originally created in the late 70s. Because there was no cap on it. So whatever it went to is what it went to. They now have caps on it, and they mention the caps in your notes. Probably either 1.5 or 2.6. Then the obvious question is, what the heck does that mean? Well, if I use the 1.5, it means that it cannot adjust more than 1% a year or 6% over the life of the loan. So I know the maximum my rate's gonna be using the 1.5. Would be 5%. Each year. If we're using 2.6, which is probably the more common one, this cannot be the rate for year 2 because of the cap. The cap is saying, even though the margin took it up 7, the most it can go up is 2%. So then that means this has to be 7%. Where did that come from? Last year was 5. Even though it should have jumped to 9, the cap of 2% a year would only allow it to go 2%.
But the index.
Without the cap, that rate, that second-year rate would have been 9%. And I know that the most it could be is 11%. Because what's the rate the first year? 5. And it says it can't increase more than 6% over the life of the loan. So what's 6 added to 5? 11. However many years it takes, by year 4, you could be at 11%. Using this as a guideline. Yes?
But if the index is the cost of the money, then the bank starts losing money?
No.
They never lose.
The rate goes up. You pay more. Who the hell do you think the bank's gonna lose money?
Yeah, bro.
Because your payment just went up.
Well,
Because your rate is now 7%.
I know.
The bank will lose money if somehow you made enough to buy out the rest of the loan. That's how they lose money. But they'll still make money because they're
So
just
they still
charging
add the
more.
margin. Okay.
Mr. Dale, they also have a cap for the veterans as well, right?
Right here.
Yeah, because they have adjustable rates for FHA and their caps. Now, it also could go the other way. It could go down. but it can only go down 2%. So what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So there is a possibility you could go up 2% one year and turn around and come back down 2% the next. Because the index dropped 2%. You realize the margin has no bearing on what that rate's gonna do. It's a fixed number.
You're still making 2%.
So the margin there all the way across is gonna be 2%.
Right. Yep. Like I said, the index is what's gonna cause things to go up or down. Now, the thing that they hit on is what the index is and what the margin is. So the first thing I have to know is the two parts of the adjustable rate are the index and the margin.
We should add it,
Huh?
we should just add it.
Yeah. And the margin is where they make a profit and pay their costs. Yes. Index and margin are stars.
Does the margin vary from lender to lender?
Yes. Absolutely.
And the index is the same?
Not necessarily. There are several different indexes that they use out there in the marketplace with adjusting the rates. So, no, it may not be the same index.
You will have a big difference if the index.
It depends.
Yeah.
Because the fact that the index is not static, that's an impossible question to answer. Now, could I give you a historical answer as to what it's been? Yes. Can't tell you what it's gonna be in the future.
No, but I mean,
But using the 1, 5, and 2 to 6, you're not gonna, if you apply for every single loan, or it's not gonna be much different. I'm just guessing, I'm just asking you.
Whatever, yes.
on the index though, on a given day, is it the same for all lenders?
No.
No, okay.
May not even be the same index. Now, if all the lenders were using the same index, and their adjustment period date is the same, then yes, all of them will have the same index. But they would have to be using the same index, and their conversion date would have to be the same.
Right.
So that when they went back to 30 years, the 30 days, they would both come up with the same rate. So that's why my first answer was, yes, yes, yes. Yes.
I was just gonna say, to put it in a little perspective, the fast moving index like the LIBOR and Prime are the ones that tend to be higher. You have cost of deposit, cost of saving, cost of funds, which are lower. They're slower moving indexes, so they don't move as big a jump or faster.
Isn't it great that we have a mortgage company? So I don't have to worry about all this shit every day.
Sorry, the TBL, what is?
It's an index,
Is that is an index? Okay.
it's a government index.
Is the name of it or?
Okay, on page 284. We got a bunch of little mortgages there. The partially amortized, we talked about before. Partially amortized means I've got a 30-year loan. I'm sorry, I've got a 15-year loan with a 30-year amortization, which means my payments are set up as if I had 30 years to pay them off. Because the amortization period is how many years you have making equal payments to pay it off. So if I've got a shorter term than I do an amortization period, then when that loan matures, There's gonna be a balance there, because I haven't been paying long enough to pay it off.
So it's not.
So if you had a 15-year loan, but your payments were calculated on a 30-year amortization, you're making payments as if you had 30 years to pay it off. But the loan's maturity is in 15 years,
I don't
which
understand.
obviously leaves a balance.
So it's not for 15 years.
The loan is for 15 years. Your payments are calculated based upon 30 years.
But what is the purpose of that? I don't know.
Yeah, what is it?
Why should you do that?
Lowers the payments.
Okay.
So they charge you full interest anyway, so, well, then it's good business.
When
You
we
can get a
get,
lower interest rate on that.
You get lower,
Yeah, because they get your money back later.
so when you get to 15 years, then you calculate it.
You got a balance, and you have to figure out what you're gonna do. Are you gonna pay it off? Are you gonna refinance it?
So it's a possibility, there's renegotiation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Bank would be glad to do that,
Refinancing a car.
because they're gonna have all the costs and everything to redo the loan.
Oh,
Good, no problem, we'll be glad. Should I make an appointment for you tomorrow at 12?
oh, yeah.
So you can ask for partially amortized mortgage.
Right.
Then you pay it off. Which is the better scenario for a loan? That could be a good.
It's not a simple answer. There's too many factors that come into play.
Now I got that concept.
Well, you know what? I couldn't afford to make 15-year payments. So then, having a 15-year term with 30-year amortization period,
The amount that you
then
have to pay is less.
now the loan amount, I mean the payment,
It's less.
becomes more manageable.
Yeah.
So, you see, that's why we send our buyers to the lender so the lender can evaluate them and determine which type of loan would be the best for them. As you can see here, there's a lot of factors that come into play. And I can't keep up with all that. It's not my job. But I can talk the language. I can communicate with the lender. So when the lender's explaining things, I understand them. I don't have to worry about what the index is gonna be. All I have to do is ask them. The second one is bi-weekly.
Is that typically done on 30,
Is what typically done?
the bi-weekly mortgage?
The bi-weekly mortgage means that your payments, you make 2 payments each month.
Right, but is that typically a 15-year mortgage or?
No, not necessarily.
Could be anything.
Now, in a bi-weekly mortgage, you make 26 payments each year, which means you actually make 1 extra month's payment. By doing that, it will reduce your loan period about 8 years.
8 years? That much?
We'll lower it 8 years, which means that you'll have a maturity of 22,
Or pay off it?
whatever.
Yeah.
Hard to find a bank that'll do it for me.
That'll do a bi-weekly?
Weekly?
Yeah, I tried 5 times, it's never worked.
And I have a
Can you
question,
get out
what
once
you
you
can
sign
do,
up for it?
can I make a suggestion, what's that?
Oh, I've already paid it off, I think.
I don't know, depends on what the terms of your agreement with the bank is.
Payment at the end of the year to place the.
Well, yeah, I can get out of it, it's called refinance. All you have to do is dig in your pocket.
But then the
Without
bank,
a-
the principal goes
If you
higher.
say you can.
Yeah, you should get the
It's,
The next one is the package mortgage.
okay, one question about the weekly mortgage. It's not a matter of you ask the bank to, I wanna pay twice a month.
No, you want a bi-weekly mortgage.
Yes, but what I'm saying is just You just have to ask the bank and then do it. Is that-
You can't do it.
No.
You have to sign up for it.
I understand, but you just have to ask the bank for it, and is that it or no?
No, depends on the bank.
Because
bank
it's
give-
bi-weekly,
if
I
the
don't
bank gives-
surprise you says it's not possible, I know bi-weekly.
I never said it was impossible.
So, but my question is a matter of you just ask the bank and the bank said, okay, and then you sign for it?
Of course. I don't think the bank's gonna call you up and ask you if you wanna,
mortgage.
Not all banks
Yeah, but it,
Nobody, you're going to the bank. The bank isn't coming to you.
yeah. But if I go to the bank, probably a great possibility, I have it already.
I have no idea.
It's better.
You can tell me when you come back. I'm serious. If I'm working with the buyer and the buyer's asking me all these questions, I'm gonna tell, well, we'll discuss it when you get back.
Yeah, go try to.
Go talk to the person that's gonna make you a loan. They can answer all your questions. I don't have the time to keep up with all the changes. That's what I got enough changes to deal with. Financing's not another. And then a lot of people said, then why do we spend so much time talking about financing?
So you know.
Because you need to be able to communicate with a very important part of the transaction, and that's the financing.
I would come back and start telling you their mortgage.
The next one's called a package mortgage. This is typically a mortgage on a new home. Because in a new home, you get an appliance package, for example. Normally, the lenders do not like personal property as collateral. But you know that they build it into the price. You don't have a separate bill for all the personal property that goes along with it. A package mortgage means that there is real and personal property there. You'll notice when you come in, you start looking at the sales contract, the personal property rarely has a separate dollar value. The reason for that is the lenders will deduct whatever value you put on the personal property from the price.
Can you remind me what is real?
Huh?
Remind me the concept of real property?
Real is land or
Okay.
something you build on the land
Or
or
an
attached to
assessment.
the.
Do me a favor, stomp your feet. Stomp your feet. That's real property.
The land.
What you stomped your feet on was fixture.
Slab.
And when you go out and you take a breath, there's part of your real property too. Your air rights. The next one is the HELOCs, the home equity loan. Now, tell me what that loan, what collateral is being put up for this loan? The equity in your property. That's what they probably call a home equity loan. And obviously, how much of a loan you can get is gonna be dictated by what? The equity in your property. Now, they will refer to these one as a HELOC. What's that stand for? Home equity line of credit.
That's different. The loan is different than credit.
How different is what?
The loan is, if you get a home equity loan, that's different than a home equity line of credit.
Yeah.
Okay, what's HELOC stand for again? Home equity loan?
It is. It's the same.
It's a loan of
Home
credit.
equity line of credit is what the HELOC stands for. The home equity loan is, with the HELOCs, a lot of times, you get a checkbook. And you can write checks until you run out of 10,000. The home equity loan is you get a lump sum. And a second mortgage, assuming that we have first. That you do whatever you want to with it. The next one is a purchase money mortgage. It's called seller financing. When the seller agrees to hold part or all of the financing, that is called a purchase money mortgage.
Oh, can you explain that again? I didn't hear that.
When the seller holds financing, in other words, the buyer says, I want to buy the property, I'm having a problem getting a loan. I would like you to hold a 5-year partially amortized mortgage. So who becomes the mortgagee?
The seller.
The seller. And the buyer? The mortgagor. And then we send them to the attorney to prepare the documentation for that loan. You will find periodically that second mortgages will be seller financing. Here's why. They've got a CD coming due in 6 months. They don't want to pull the money now because they're getting hit with a penalty and they obviously lose interest. So they'll work out a purchase money mortgage for 6 months. At the end of 6 months, their CD matures. They're now able to withdraw the money and pay off. So it's not going to probably be a 30-year amortized mortgage.
But the deed goes to the buyer in this case.
Yeah, the deed still goes to the buyer. It's not a contract for deed.
Yeah, so
So
How are you
in that
protect?
situation, the seller's a lender like any other lender.
but you get the first priority to collect if something happens?
Well, was the purchase money mortgage the first mortgage recorded on the property? Or is there an existing mortgage already there? If there's no existing mortgage already there, then yes, the purchase money mortgage takes priority. On the next page, they talk about the home equity conversion mortgage. Now, I don't think anybody on the face of the earth would have an idea what that is. However, if you said a reverse mortgage, it would probably be something. See, this is neat. The bank pays us until we run out of equity.
Exactly, yeah, that's what I thought. Oh, that is like.
But I see that actually they can't take you out of the contract.
Now, there's a catch. Yeah, I used to say it this way, you have to be real old to qualify.
Yeah, that is what I said.
That was when I was 40.
Yeah, close to a die.
Now,
At 65
you
now?
know, you don't have to be that old to do it.
Nice.
Oh, you said, gamble.
One of the problems with this baby is a lot of expenses up front. So you really have to evaluate whether this makes sense or not. But it is something where I have seen it, this type of thing done to help pay the cost of assisted living.
Or to stay at home.
Why you said that, 40? I mean, I thought this applies to all people.
65 and now 62. 65.
I don't like being referred to as a old person. See, you guys keep forgetting I have a red pen.
No, but hey,
No,
listen, I'm freaking
I'm
out.
deadly with it too.
I'm freaking out because I'm 40 and I'm like, oh my God, so I already qualified for that.
Well, I wouldn't do a reverse mortgage anyhow, but that's neither here nor there. But see, I don't decide what type of financing is best for the buyer. As I do more and more business and I get more familiar with them, I'll have a pretty good idea of the type of financing that probably will work for them. But I'm gonna leave that up to them and the lender. That's why I need them to do the pre-approval. So we know what type of financing they can afford. And it may be different types, and the mortgage person will discuss the advantages and disadvantages of each one of them. And if the buyer would let you, That would be a good conversation to listen into. Because you would learn a lot about how the lender goes about evaluating a potential buyer. So then I can start learning the questions that I probably should be asking to give an indication that this person is worth contacting the mortgage person. Okay. We will take a look at FHA and VA on whatever day it is we're coming back. I think it's Monday.
Do we bring our other book one day?
Yes, please bring your other book with you. I want to take a few minutes and run through that on Monday.